In this video, we'll discuss providing additional test attempts to students. In a situation in which a student needs an additional attempt at a test or wasn't able to access the test during the designated time or the availability period, you can provide them with additional attempts or ignore a previous attempt. There are several ways to do this. The first way we will demonstrate is using the availability exemption area to provide this. First, let's locate the test on Blackboard. Our test is in Assessments and Rubrics. Once we're here, hover over the name of the test, click the chevron that appears next to it, and then click Edit Test Options. About halfway down this page, scroll to the Test Availability Exceptions and click Add User or Group. I know this test has already been taken by Joe Test Student and Rob Adelson Preview User. Let's say Joe needs another attempt. We click the box next to Joe's name, and then we click the Submit button. This is all based on the parameters that we've initially established for this test. For example, if we didn't add a timer originally, then we can't add a different timer for Joe. However, if we did add a timer on this test, say our original timer was 30 minutes, and we said auto submit was on, you'll see that there's now an option to set a timer for Joe separately. What we can do here is we can decide to give Joe additional attempts by going to multiple attempts and then putting in a number. If we do this, even though Joe has already taken the test once, he'll be able to take it one more time. This method is good if you want to change the timer and availability for the individual students that you want to add test availability exceptions for. For example, maybe we want to give Joe 40 minutes instead of at 30 minutes, and maybe we want to make it so that he can access the test starting tomorrow through next week, rather than the limitations that have been established for other students. Once we've set this up and click Submit, if we log in as Joe, and we go ahead and go to our Assessments and Rubrics, we can see that the test still appears for us. And since we have multiple attempts, we can begin. Now, we can see that we've already taken it once. We can go ahead and click Start Submission to take it again. If a student has multiple attempts on a test, then in their My Grades area, when they click on the name of the test, they'll be able to see both calculated grades from the first time they took the test and from the second time they took the test, or the third time or the fourth time, depending on how many attempts you give them. When you're grading the student from the Grade Center and Full Grade Center, when you go to the cell and click the chevron, you'll be able to see both attempts. Since we gave Joe additional attempts, the first attempt is automatically exempted and does not contribute to their grade. However, we can always go back to the first attempt or choose to go into the second attempt. When we go to View Grade Details, this is the other way for us to manage how many attempts the student gets. When we go in here, we can see that there are several options on the right. When we click Clear Attempt, that will remove the attempt from the student. We don't recommend this. If we click Ignore Attempt, however, what this does is still allows us to keep the data. That is, we can still come in, we can still view the attempt, and we can still get the information of when the student started it, what questions they got right, and what questions they got wrong. However, it suppresses this information from that student. This will also allow them to retake the test if they've only gotten one attempt originally, Or, in this case, since Joe has 2 attempts, he'll be able to go in and take the test again. Ignoring attempt is reversible by clicking Do Not Ignore Attempt. This will reinstate the values, including any additional information on the test, and make it available to the student. One last thing on this page that we haven't necessarily discussed yet is the exempt option. What exempt does is it puts this little symbol next to it. Basically, this prevents that score from being added to the totals. If we go back to our grade center, we can see that this has been exempted, which means that it's not available any longer in the totals. We can clear the exemption by going to the chevron and drop down and clicking Clear Exemption. This will restore any grade or score to our totals. You can put in an exemption if a student takes the test but is not required to take that test, or it's not part of their weighted total or their regular total. Our next video will go over locating your test on Blackboard.